Thanks so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
First off, can you kind of clarify this for me? Are you a registered massage therapist?
Well, I'm registered, but not really as an RMT.
Okay. So, like, if I have a kink in my neck, if I got something medically
I can
wrong
definitely
with me?
I can definitely work out your kinks for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's an advertising slogan.
Why not?
Okay, but you're not a registered massage therapist, though, correct? Okay. Do you consider yourself a sex trade worker? Do you consider yourself a healthcare professional, or something in between that?
I guess it's sort of something in between. According to the license that I do have, we do not provide sexual services, but I have to say that I definitely do consider myself a sex trade worker because what I do is sexual. In my opinion, whether you're having intercourse or not, if you're providing a sexual service, there's a lot of different ways that one can provide a sexual service. So.
Okay, when you say that you're not allowed to provide a sort of sexual service, is that in particular, do you mean intercourse?
Yeah. But then also the municipal licensing strictures that we abide by because I'm licensed as a body rubber. So according to the licensing strictures, we do not provide sexual services.
How did you first become involved, become this massage therapist / sex trade worker?
Well, it was sort of a friend of a friend situation. So I actually had worked in a sex shop for a long time. So I'd had a lot of contact with people in the industry on every level, from exotic dancers to escorts to street workers to porn stars, like the whole gambit. And so I met someone that actually works at my spa, and she'd been there for a long time, and she was really happy, and I was like, wow, that's sort of like different than I've heard a lot of people sound about their jobs. So it intrigued me, especially, I mean, the money is definitely a drawing factor too, and I was like, well, I'm a very sexual person. I study sexuality in school. Like, I'm very interested in this line of work for numerous reasons. So I decided to sort of try it out. And I was like, if I don't like it, I can leave.
So this was a conscious choice, conscious decision on your behalf to become involved in the sex trade industry, because I think, there's one of two people. There's those that make that conscious choice, and there's those that argue that this is a trap, particularly for a lot of women that are addicted to drugs, and this is the only way that they can maintain that life.
For sure. That's why the discussion is so difficult, right? And I think that's probably why you guys chose to talk to people that are actually in the industry working, rather than the other side of it, the experts that are sort of studying from the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what is your experience? Is that more a myth that, I mean, certainly there are sex trade workers, I think, that are abused or trapped in a situation, but is that the minority compared to, from your experience, those that maybe have made a conscious decision like yourself?
I mean, in my experience, it's the minority, but it's also, I think it's really important to acknowledge the privilege that I have, where I didn't, as much as the money was appealing, I didn't need the money. I have a lot of abilities and capabilities. I have a university education. There's a lot of jobs that I could get if I wanted to. And for that matter, I do work for my university that I'm going to school at right now. So I think that the fact that I have a lot of privilege in society in general allowed me that sort of privileged access into the sex industry, where I said, I sort of can set a standard for myself, saying, well, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, so I'll only do this, and I was able to access that.
Okay, so you only do what you're personally comfortable with.
Exactly, exactly.
Do you wrestle at all with the morality with this? A lot of people obviously don't like the sex trade, look negatively at it. Do you ever, in a quiet moment, have a problem with the job?
No. I've been a sexually liberal person for a long time, and I've never seen a problem in the idea of exchanging money for sex, especially if you consider the whole dating industry. There's a dating industry and there's a sex industry, and every part of our sexuality is commodified at this point. So to me, separating the explicit sort of offering of a sexual service for money from all of these other things where you can go into a sex shop and buy all these sorts of things, you know, outfits, toys, porn, anything. And then also the idea of, you know, the club industry, the dating industry, buying someone dinner, and then once you go home, I mean, you know, to me it's not that different, and it's very naive for people to think that that's so different.
All right, let me ask you about the legalities, because the Supreme Court struck down the prostitution laws back in December, citing that it was an unsafe work environment for prostitutes. And the Nordic model seems to be on the table, or the Danish model. One, of course, would crack down on the Johns or the clients, make it illegal to purchase sex. The other would legalize it, but the government would regulate it. Would you like to see either of those implemented, or something different?
The only thing for me that seems in any way logical at this point would be like a total decriminalization and just kind of leave it at that. What I find these other models imply, if not implicitly then explicitly, is that workers are not the experts in their own experiences. I don't see how the government would be able to regulate something that, you know, I mean, how many government workers have done sex work? If any, none of them will admit it because of the obvious taboos, which is why my identity has to be, you know, covered up. But I guess I just feel like, especially, so, okay, the Nordic model, if you criminalize the client, what is really happening is the clients are feeling like they need to hide, which is very unsafe for the service provider, because if my client doesn't want to give his real name or her real name, then, you know, how am I supposed to feel in any way safe? I could say the same thing with government regulation. Is, you know, next thing we know, there's a red light district, and so it's geographically moving things to the shadows and saying like, oh well, you know, we don't want a sex worker working next door to us. Meanwhile, you know, if you do have a sex worker working beside you, you don't know it, first of all. Second of all, they're probably very professional, very quiet, and very respectful. So you could very well have your neighbor running their own brothel beside you, and you would never know.
All right, so your preferred option is decriminalization, in which you're allowed to go about your business, do what you want to do without government interference.
Essentially, because in my opinion, that'll allow more sex workers to get closer to sort of the positive experience that I had, where I feel a level of autonomy and I feel like I'm in control of my own situations and I can engage in scenarios that I feel comfortable with.
Canadians Talk, a national conversation on prostitution, is coming up Monday, March 31st, 7 Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific on your local Chorus radio station. I'm Jeff MacArthur, and I look forward to speaking to you then.